Hello and welcome back to Elliott's podcast. We have a talk show edition for you. Some of my friends tell me they like it when I talk. and my thinking is always the same. I feel like it's the show is no matter what type of episode I do, I feel like it's more suited for someone to go to sleep to. Like you could put this on and you will fall asleep. I know that's not setting the bar very high, but it's the way it is. So I have Teddy here. The door is closed because I record on Saturday night. I wish I could record on a different day, but it just happens this way, and it's a long weekend here, so there's a lot of activity in the building, and that sets him off. I actually once recorded 2 weeks ago. There's an episode where it's a sunset and it's me playing piano and lap steel guitar. I actually recorded that one early in the morning, like when I woke up. And I wish I would do almost all of them that way, but it just doesn't work out that way. So here we are. Saturday night, and I tell you that because it's almost guaranteed Teddy's gonna freak out and bark soon. What can you do? So yeah, I hadn't done when I did the 1 year anniversary. I talked a bit more because I was announcing, showcasing the mini album EP from this month. But otherwise, I had done a lot of my episodes where I play music, and in the last two, I only played music, and then I thought it'd be nice to switch it up. So one of the things that now I had done a lot of talk episodes in a few months ago, like around December, January-ish, before I took to playing music on the podcast. And a lot of the stuff that I had spoke about in those episodes is like almost the same. Like and my theories and everything that I talked about there are very much have really stayed in place, and I'll talk about some of those today. But the funny thing is, when I do a podcast, I feel like most of the work is in what I call setting levels, and that is like making sure the microphone's at the right level, turning the camera on, getting the camera working. That seems to be most of the work. Otherwise, so that's like a lot of the physical work. And then to do a podcast is a lot of mental work, and you have a bit of stress about it leading up to it. And my show's a little different than a lot of other shows where they get guests on and they interview them. Because mine is mine is more self-motivated, and it's up to me to come up with stuff. And I guess the added part about this whole setting levels thing is that it makes me realize that it's really for me. The podcast is for me to show up and be here. And it is kind of a test for myself. Like, when is the week when I might give up and stop doing them? And that's really, it's been an interesting process. And then you come back and you realize that, like, every episode I learn something new or I do something different. And that's where that whole concept about setting levels comes in, is that all it really is me learning how to set the levels. Beyond that, it's kind of it does it. It's kind of automatic. It does itself. I know that's hard to explain, but I just wanted to put that out there because I had almost this brain fart thing about setting levels. It was almost like in my head, I thought that I could just rename. It would almost be if I had to rebrand the podcast and rename it. I would rename it as of this week, Setting Levels, which is kind of like setting expectations and setting the expectations low, because that's really what it comes down to for getting these things done is like, don't dream up some grandiose version of what's going to happen here. If that's just going to stop you in your tracks. And I think that applies to working on music and practicing and all that. So I'm drinking some tea here. It took me so long to set my levels that the tea is not that hot, but I used to drink a tea from David's Tea called Pavarotti's something. It had the name. It had Pavarotti in it, and they stopped making that tea. And so I looked up. I knew it was a chamomile tea. I discovered it for the first time in Montreal at the Mutech Festival in Montreal, which is happening again in August. For a few years, they did a separate festival called Mutech IMG, which was a video. I mean, it was still a music festival, but it was based on the idea of video art. And I went to it once or twice, and they had a little conferences with it. And I remember I went into the hallway and at the Fee Center, and this lady had prepared the tea for the guests, and it was Pavarotti's whatever from David's Tea, and I used to drink it. And then I wanted to try it again many years later. And David's Tea, if you don't know, is a Canadian tea company that sells loose tea, and they kind of went into a restructuring in the past few years. So, but they still do exist, but they did pretty much go bankrupt. And so, anyways, the tea isn't available, but I ended up learning how to just make my own tea, which sounds so silly, and I forgot to bring it in here with me, but it's chamomile. I have a huge bag of chamomile tea, and then it's licorice root is the second item in there. And if you want, you could either put in a little bit of peppermint, or you can put in a little bit of berry tea and or dried fruit tea or whatever. But without just those two elements, the chamomile and the licorice root is enough to recreate the tea that I knew. And it's pretty funny to figure all that out. And just, I realized that licorice root makes all the teas the best, and that includes peppermint. So if you do peppermint and licorice, that's also a great tea as well. Let me know what your tea is that you like to prepare loose. If you are watching this on YouTube, you can put that in the comments. So yeah, the big thing that I wanted to report back on was that in what month? Yeah, in December-ish or whatever, I had kind of learned from the Huberman Lab podcast. No, I couldn't have learned it all the way back in December. I don't know if I've been listening to his podcast that long. I've been familiar with Huberman's work, but I do remember in the winter, maybe January, February, or whatever, I had commented about a theory that he brings up on his show about when the day is divided up into three sections, and it's the morning, like first thing in the morning, up until lunchtime. Yeah. Up until 8 hours after you've woken up, which if you wake up early, that will set you to lunchtime. For other people, that's mid-afternoon. And that's the most prime. You have the most ability to do difficult work in that time. And then afterwards, afternoon to evening, you are descending back to sleep. And different chemicals come out for that time of day, and then you go into sleep at nighttime. And I learned about this. I mean, I had hunches about this thing about the morning. I mean, for many years, but hearing it on that podcast kind of helped me. I started to pay more attention to it. This issue that if you have what he calls work that has high degree of limbic friction, which means it takes a lot of inner motivation to do that work, that your best chance of doing it is early in the morning. Now, there are people who, and I was kind of one of these people when I was younger, but I really don't think that was completely true. But there are some people who will have this limbic ability, the ability to motivate and do things late at night, because they're genuinely a night owl, or they're not distracted by stuff going on. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that in the past few months, I have, I'm not going to necessarily say that every morning I'm productive and I do things right away. But I've actually just continued to make it a priority. Like I have not strayed from that idea. And if anything, it's I would say this idea of morning hours is becoming almost a bit of a religion for me. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but the reason I call it a bit of a religion is because it's the only word that I can think of when I think of how prioritized it is for me to go to bed early and to wake up early. And I've now make a lot of decisions on different things based on will it ruin my ability to go to sleep early and to wake up early. And as a result, I would say this is in conjunction with the pandemic, which really allowed for this type of change and experimentation to happen. Because if you go back a few months, after around New Year's time, we had lockdowns in Canada. So, and now this society is peeled away from those, and there's a lot more stuff going on. But in that time, over the many different lockdowns, I guess I had the ability to really pay attention to this situation about prioritizing going to sleep and then waking up in the morning. So I will share with you my current sleep time is 9 p.m. is when I try to go to sleep around 9 p.m. And that doesn't mean I'm not in bed usually at 9 p.m. But that's the ideal, would be like starting to get ready at 8:30 p.m. for 9 p.m. By 9:30 p.m. I'm usually in bed, hopefully, and then by 10 I'm most likely out cold, or out-ish. And then I wake up at 5:15 in the morning. And then at 5:15 in the morning, I don't move very quickly. That's because I am probably historically a night owl. I don't pop out of bed, and I don't know if I ever will. But by 5:40, some kind of exercise is usually started. So, and then I have coffee at 6:30 to 7, which is funny that Huberman also confirms that he believes that something about not having coffee until an hour and a half after you wake up. Like, don't just wake up and have coffee or caffeine, because I don't even know why, but for me it doesn't matter. I'm not following whatever he's saying. It was a very natural idea for me. I also did not like the idea of because I personally am hoping to eventually very much lower caffeine. It's become quite challenging, though, I must admit, to do that, because what happens if you might be aware, is that if you drink coffee and then you lower the amount of coffee and caffeine that you drink, you get headaches. And so it's quite difficult to manage. If you want to drink less coffee, it takes actually like weeks to do it in a very organized manner. So I am struggling a bit with that. I only drink 1 to 2 cups, usually 2 cups a day. I try to make that second cup, by late morning. I try to cut that off, and that's either half decaf or it's espresso based drink, which is less caffeine. Espresso is less caffeine because the water doesn't, the coffee doesn't interact with the water very long. It's like a more immediate thing. With drip coffee, which is another part of my religion, I'm religious about drip coffee. That is higher in caffeine because the water is interacting and steeping and bringing out the caffeine in the coffee for longer. So that's a bit about, I drink the coffee about an hour and a half after I wake up, ish. Yeah. And then ideally I would work on some music in the morning around 7 or 8. I don't often do that, but that is part of this whole thesis that I'm working on, is that you should use that time. There's this window that I've just described, which starts at 5:30 in the morning, and it goes until around 9 a.m. You should try to use. Now, most people don't wake up at 5:30. It's a bit nuts. But even if someone woke up an hour earlier than maybe their norm, they've now created an hour to tackle what I call their most creative work, which is the MCW. And the most creative work is what I've called before the catch me if you can work, because no one else can do it. No bot can do your MCW. It is your contribution to this planet is your MCW. However, I will preface that for a lot of people, they might not need to do their MCW in this morning hours. They can also, like, for example, if you have, let's say you work with clients and you have stuff that's outstanding for them, it's not finished, you might be better off doing that in that time, because it'll clear off that, so that maybe the day after you can now do your most creative work. So this morning hour is useful for clearing off. Clearing off is not, that's not the point of life, is we don't want to be clearing off work. Just clearing it off, get the shit out of here. I don't think that's the ideal situation, but that is sort of reality, is that we often have work that just needs to get done. And even I can speak to the idea of like with music stuff, like there's the fun work, which is writing the music and producing it, and then there's the more difficult work, which is like finishing it, and then the most difficult work is promoting it. And so that's something that you can also throw into this time. And I go back to Huberman, and why that was very illuminating was because it confirmed, hearing it from him, that you have the highest ability in this morning time to focus your energy into getting this kind of stuff done. I had done some experiments as well where I don't let myself have coffee until I've practiced. I've done my like 20 minutes of guitar practice, 20, 30 minutes. That actually worked the best because I withheld the reward until the hard work was done. I didn't keep doing that though, because I thought that was a bit taskmasterish, a bit oppressive to do that. But that works too. I also don't like doing that because I do think it is really important to have physical exercise. And when I don't have physical exercise and it goes on for a while, I definitely don't feel as well. I don't feel well in general, and so I prioritize physical exercise, and then I get the coffee unreleased after that. And the hope with physical exercise is that it will create a cascade of ability for you. So it can be as simple as doing yoga for 10 or 15 minutes. If you do that, I recommend this app called Down Dog, which generates a yoga routine. And I say that because I've tried doing yoga on my own for 10, 15 minutes, and it's not really a workout because it's a good as a stretch, but it's not. And that's probably most closest to what the spirit of yoga is to not need an app or an instructor or go to a yoga class to do yoga, except I find it very helpful. So that app is good because going on YouTube is a bit annoying to find the right video. Like you don't want to. The app just starts and it plays. It generates this routine. So I mean, ideally I would talk about the morning every podcast and check in about that. But that's a bit repetitive. However, it is sort of becoming one of the most interesting things that I'm kind of researching in my own personal way. And the other part of all this is in what I think is most useful for people. I mean, this part about the morning stuff I think is very good because you can be working in any type of work and aspiration, and what I'm talking about can be very helpful for you. And I've talked about it with some friends who are working on stuff, and I talk about some strategies about implementing the morning hours. By the way, that part of the morning routine is also morning pages, which is the free writing exercises where you just write. Lately, I write actually into the computer for 10 minutes because my handwriting is very messy, and with this writing into the computer, I get the note is neatly typed up. It could be anything for 10 minutes. You just keep writing, and it clears your mind, and it helps you go through what you might be working on for the day, or some new ideas that came to you overnight. So that's a big part of things too. But so this whole thing about the morning stuff is very important. As I said, for people who, for any type of work, it's very generalized insights that I've come up with. And as I repeat, but again, a lot of that insight and work was helped. I got focused on it. My camera lens got focused because of the pandemic. And then the other side of things would probably be part 2. And I don't know if I can go into more detail another time. This part has not been completely mastered, and I'm maybe a bit more interested in it, in this side of things, which is relationship with your creative work, and specifically for me as music. And I'm probably most interested in keeping it in music. So a lot of this stuff would be for musicians, but it can also be for aspiring musicians. And I'm curious if I sometimes ask people if they're interested in playing an instrument, and I think everyone should try to work music into their life. An interesting experiment that I'm going through at the moment is I rented a clarinet a few months, 2 months ago, and I'm really on the fence about keeping the rental going. And then I recently bought a book of songs, and I have my doubts because, and this is very much what a typical busy person, like just someone who works and has other responsibilities. That's what the typical person would go through, is me and the clarinet, because the clarinet's being added on to an already full schedule with work, recording. The guitar in itself has its own set of work that goes on. And so this clarinet has been an interesting experiment for me, and I've really not played it much. And so it's almost as if this is the focus of this second area that I'm talking about at the moment, which is, how do you get motivated to play an instrument or record music, to work on music almost any time of day. And I say almost any time of day because it's much more likely that you will be able to do this activity in the morning, as was just discussed. But the reality is that our schedules don't always allow for that. As I just had also mentioned, that if I spend the morning doing a bit of exercise, drinking coffee, getting cleaned up, getting ready to start a traditional work day, then and then you do work or whatever in the daytime, you now have the evening to work on your music or most creative work. And then now that becomes very interesting, because now you have a lot of forces against you. Mainly the biggest force going against you is the sun is dipping down into the away from the horizon, and that means your energy is sapping. And you really, that's why people love television, because it works well with low energy. You lie in a bed and you watch, or you sit on a couch and you watch stuff, and it stimulates you, and it can be so stimulating that this is why a lot of people go to sleep later, is because aside from just the blue light from the screen, there's can be gripping storylines, and you don't really have that when you have a creative practice out of the box. Like learning instruments and recording music out of the box is not that engaging. When you get into it and you start to peel away the layers of ability and learning, it can be as gripping as Westworld or Breaking Bad. And that's sort of what I'm interested in helping uncover some of these things, is what gets people in there, and really what that comes down to. And the shorthand for a lot of this, excuse me. The shorthand for what I'm talking about at the moment is flow. And flow is often it gets name dropped a lot. I actually happen to have an interview. I have interviewed the psychologist, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I interviewed him a few years ago, and I've never really compiled the interview, and now I'm name dropping him. But it was a really amazing experience to get to interview him. And I know this will be very useful to have. I don't often see interviews with him being published, but anyways, I'm just saying that, I'm just mentioning that as a dimension to my interest in the area. But there was a good interview I heard with Stephen Kotler, who also researches and writes about flow. And in that interview, he described flow as every street drug, a cocktail of every street drug combined together and created by the body. And he's referring to extreme sports in that clip, because he had, I think, hung out with like extreme sports athletes and whatever. And that's the addiction. You often see people more addicted to sports, like snowboarding and stuff, like extreme. You're like in it. Rock climbing. These are really intense things, and playing music can be just as intense. I know there's been experiences where I'm writing something or recording, and I'm listening back to stuff I've recorded, or I've done or playing music on this podcast, and something has clicked and come together. And my best description of flow in that case is that it's this cocktail of everything has come in, and you're like in this like a beam of light is shining down from like the heavens on you, and you are the center of the universe in that moment. Now that's not how. Then you move on. If you were to always be in the center of the universe and have a beam of light on you, we'd call you crazy. But that is sort of maybe that is an ideal to work towards, is that you are able to live every day in a way where a beam of light is shining on you and you're on it. And sometimes it looks like when you peer at celebrities and you peer at influencers. Oh, excuse me, I'm not sitting very well. When you peer into these people through what you're able to take in through video and YouTube and Instagram, it looks like these people are in repetitive, perpetual flow in their careers, and they're collaborating with people all the time, and they're probably being asked to go here, go to the Grammy Awards, go there. And it can be a bit deflating to think that you have to create your own exciting life for yourself, and that it's not, no one's asking you to go here, go there, go here, play a show in Paris tomorrow night, and then go do an interview in Melbourne the next day. And that's why you can't stare at people like that that's not a healthy way to live. And I talked about that on many of the previous podcasts, is that, comparing, like looking at people and comparing yourself to them, is probably one of the most, toxic ways that social media manifests. And it's not necessarily, something that social media companies do. It's what we do, and it's what people typically did to themselves, even before social media. If they were reading magazines about celebrities and they were watching TV, it would have been the same. But all this to say is that I'm interested in how we access this state and this better relationship with music, and it's maybe a lifelong journey and a lifelong work and research, because there's no easy answer, and I don't really want to try to ever say that I'm going to make that answer easy. There's many different angles. I mean, one of the big inspirations from this type of work for me to be looking into it is the book Effortless Mastery by Kenny Werner. He talks a lot about, he works in a lot of Eastern Zen philosophy, I would say, is what I understand that book to be, mixed with mantra and affirmation, which would also be related to manifestation and positive psychology, stuff that came from author like Neville Goddard, which he wrote a book called The Feeling is the Secret, and that, there's a lot of I'm trying to remember the name of a lot of the movement that came from that, which involves the book The Secret that came in the 90s or whatever, but there is a lot of good stuff from that side of things too, which is putting yourself in a state where you can actually start to wrap your head around the possibility that you are a good musician, and anyone who plays music will know that it's very easy to put yourself in a state where you are just not adequate, and you're always going uphill, and you're trying too hard. And I've seen videos of myself playing and I'm trying too hard, and I've seen videos of other people. But when you see really good musicians playing, they don't look like they're trying too hard, because they've done the practice in terms of, they make it look easy. And especially if you look at some of those classical pianists, it's like, wow, their fingers are moving so fast, and it's automatic. And especially looking at some of the best jazz musicians, they're not just playing fast, they're writing music on the fly at the speed of light, faster than the speed of light. And that's because of, again, the practice and spending time in there. And I guess that's where a lot of this stuff comes in, is that if you can set aside your preconceptions about your conditioning about being inadequate musician, and you set them aside so that you can get in there, and you can you stop wasting time with the mind games. And that's sort of the dream. And even when I sit down to do the podcast, there is usually a few hours of like procrastination, because I just don't know what I'm going to do or talk about or play. And to get a handle on that is people need to come up with strategies for not spending time in that space of inadequacy. And so that's the second part of all this, which is just that it's on my mind. I think these days a lot of the temptation is that everything becomes a method and everything becomes a course and all that. And I believe in these things because they help. Teddy's out cold. I wish I could have the camera on him. Everything feels like a course. Everything feels like it's for sale. But there's a good, the reason for that is good because it incentivizes the writer the creator of the method to work with it as a business. And that's sort of what kind of defines this era, is that every person has some kind of shtick going on. They have some kind of message. And for me, it really comes down to being able to show up, to sit in a chair, like I'm doing right now, and to I kind of like come clean. And I guess the joke in my head there, that why I laughed, is that it's like some kind of, it's like come to Jesus moment where you're like, okay, I turn myself in. I'm here. And that's what I think the most important part of all this is like to cut the BS out. I think there's too much of it. Too much of like, staged photos and just too much marketing. And then oftentimes when people, there is even this movement of like a selfie photo with like a sappy story. Again, just cut that shit out. Like it's too much. That is at least better. Okay. I'll give you that. That's at least an attempt for authenticity. But for me, it's my form of this is really showing up, working through music, playing music, posting it. That's my way of demonstrating what I preach. But yeah, I mean, it's not this road is not an easy one. If you want to go this road, the world typically likes things very curated, fancy video style, technique, edits, cuts. Dress yourself up like a model when you're going to be on camera. Have people follow you around with fancy DSLR cameras for photo shoot. Sometimes I don't really understand. The world it seems like it's zipping by me, and I feel, and I maybe you feel the same way too. It's very hard to figure it out. And that's okay. We don't have to be, we don't all have to be rock stars, and we don't have to be celebrities. I think the most important thing is, are you able to show up in your own way and for yourself? And if that's in sports or in music or in cooking, if you're able to create a better relationship with your work and start to draw some better boundaries with your ability to promote it and work and to be on social media, I think that's a noble goal to have. And I know that doesn't really bode well with people who want to get rich quick, because it's get rich very slow, if ever, never. So anyways, I'll leave you with some of those ideas to chew on. I will probably play music again next week. So work on some new stuff. I did some interesting recording this morning with some bird sounds. Now the birds are out, and I did some time lapse of the moon. Whoop! I got a burp. The moon was out early in the morning. I did some video time lapse there and some video. So I'm doing a lot more with the nature field recordings, which I really enjoy. To me, the field recording includes video now, where I try to take the video and learn how to loop that. And that's, you've seen some of those on the podcast where I do them, where I play the music. There's the video where I'm like there's me playing music, and then you often see nature stuff or whatever different video would come in. Some of those I do are my own video clips, but I also use a lot from the website Pexels. They've been really useful for that, because then I can get just different, like one of the episodes I had videos of carousels from like carnivals, and they worked really well with more of a techno thing. But that definitely interests me. Just capturing nature and treat and still video. Still in that the camera is locked on a tripod. So I've been working on that, and then this month I'll probably compile some of the music from the podcast to make another mini mix, which I use for my Patreon, which is patreon.com/Feinberg. And yeah, thank you for everyone. I was given a donation this week for my music, and it's quite it was quite significant. And I just my friend, if he's listening, knows. I don't want to call him out, because it wasn't like he did it in a way where he needed to be publicly recognized. But he is being recognized by me just talking about it. And it's quite amazing, that I make like less than $1 on Spotify, but I have friends and fans who support me, and it happens every once in a while that people put their hand up. And I'm not saying this in a way to ever guilt out anyone who isn't donating or whatever. I don't do this for the donations, but I just wanted to thank my friend, because it was really it came at a very interesting time, and I would say it came at an interesting time because I spend a lot of time in music stores. I would love a lot of different equipment, but I can't really have whatever I want, nor can anyone else, right? And that's kind of the fun of the whole game. And it came at an interesting time because I needed that exact amount of money for a music thing. But I'm not going to spend that money on the music thing. I want to put that money towards a longer project that I've had for a long time, envisioning increasing access to my music for people who don't want to use a specific streaming service, and that means I really want to have my own app and I have to start somewhere. I don't know how it will get done, but I do want to create this system where it's my own Spotify for me, just my music, and it's I know people could go on YouTube and listen to my music without Spotify, but in the bigger vision of this thing that I want to put the money towards is what I would call ubiquity of the music. So if you want this music on an SD card, or if you want this music on this app, or you want to listen to this music on your Apple TV, that's sort of the bigger vision, is that it's everywhere that you want it, and it's most likely free. That's why I'm kind of realizing that I'm kind of operate like a nonprofit, because that's what happened with music, and people are in long-term denial about this reality, because if I'm on Spotify and my listens aren't that high, I make no money anyways. So why am I, so it's a bit tricky. I can't really come up with an answer right now, but my mind has gone in this direction, and I had been interested in this for a while, but all this to say is thank you for my close friend for this donation, and it really I'm, as I say, I'm speechless, because it just, that's the way it is when you feel like it's like you don't know why you're doing this, and people will say, yes, what you do is very important work, and it's I can't ask for anything more when that type of thing happens. And I guess the to wrap up this show is that it's all about patience. People, if you do something like what I'm doing, if you stick with it, people will see it, and they'll acknowledge it and whatever eventually. But your job is to not work on that premise. You can't work on the premise that people need to be acknowledging your work. It's a very toxic way to work. We all get there I've seen it in myself. If I post a cute video on Instagram, and then I expect that people will like it, I've gone into that toxic realm. And the best thing we can do, Teddy's just trying to find a comfy spot. He's leaning up against a guitar pedal now. The best thing we can do is to just have a sense of faith in that we're doing the right thing, that feels right for us, and that we can get into this zone and this flow, and we can make it happen in our own way. And then we share what we do, and then and give it time, and people will raise their hand, and they will say, I heard this thing you did. It really, really spoke to me. It was really nice. Or they donate on, I have this thing called Coffee as well as Patreon. Or they just say thank you. That's all that matters. That's all that happens. And I almost said that's all that matters. It's not. It's just a bonus. So, I will sign off now. Thanks for listening, and I will see you next week. Okay, take care now. Bye-bye.